Hello, this is going to be a brief but very important lecture about Meinongian and possible world combinatorics of Nietzschean metaphysics and all possible Meinongian or nonist replications of transworld identity represented in Nietzschean personhood. So, when we talk about Meinongianism, what do we mean? Non-existently existent objects. The sense now that even if some object absolutely does not exist in this world, it doesn't possess properties or universals or abstract or tropes or tokens that possess the ontological properties, like named after the inventor of this school of philosophy called Meinongian. Now, he basically postulated that even if such as a squared circle exists according to a gradient of non-existent to existent, even if it's in an impossible world or multi-various or modal real sense, nonetheless, these objects still presents, semantic relevancy, not total semantic minimalism or reductionism. So, now, when we think of Nietzsche, so much has been written and I suppose lectured on YouTube about, his life, his melodramas, his critique of Christianity, his critique of cultural relativism, his critique of moral objectivity. But there's a question of Nietzschean values such as the superhuman, the critique of meta-ethical systems that seem to govern many religions. There's a question of these being applied ultimately to not just this world, but all possible worlds in the David Lewisian sense. And now I just want to say that, imagine, say, I don't know, East Ec Homo, or genealogy of morals, or thus spoke Zarathustra, or the gay science. Imagine all these books somehow, for example, being translated into a Sanskrit, Arabic, Klingon hybrid. Now, this language doesn't exist in any kind of semantically quantum observer device format or medium, and yet it can still be conceptualized. So, there's that question of when is something absolutely non-existent and when is something absolutely existent, and it kind of goes back to that eternal question of what does it mean to subsist versus exist, and which ultimately pre-existed first. So Nietzschean ontology and Nietzschean metaphysics, Nietzschean epistemology, it all goes back to that perennial question of the liberation of human beings under the guise of the emancipation of the will, the channeling of the will into the manifestation of not only physical reality, but ultimate eschatological metaphysical reality. And I believe that Nietzsche was pretty an arbor, a lens, harbinger of Socratic interlocutors of debate. He loved to debate Nietzsche. He was a very kind of whimsically, he had that certainly Socratic debating spirit. Let's put it that way. So I want to just say that, in this brief lecture, now the pointillisms I like to make, or not pointillism is simply a neologism I invented, but points that I like to make here, pointillisms, is simply that you can apply literally any Nietzschean concept. Say you take it from the Stanford Dictionary of Encyclopedia, and you can literally prompt these prompts into, asking for a Meinongian universal truth machine. This is past, in a Meinongian world where all the objects never exist in this world or possibly all ever worlds, yet they seem to flourish, even if they have never really been conceptually defined by the quantum observer. So I think that certainly there's this alchemical question of Nietzsche and how he viewed the moral semantics of possible worlds in general, as well as the ontological and metaphysical semantics. And this kind of game here collectively of what it means to be, a relativist versus an objectivist, and also true notary or true accountant of abacuses, it seemed to merologically combinatorically shuffle themselves to create the sums that then become quantum chemistry, that then become life, that then become consciousness. Nietzsche himself, I wonder if he would critique that foundation, and he would critique really any essentialist foundation, simply using his own kind of critique of morals of theology being applied to all possible metaphysical systems in general. So, anyways, I think that in this brief lecture, I'd like to close by saying that the synthesis between Meinongianism and Nietzscheanism is precisely that squared circles possess Übermensch or Überfrau, in the case of a superwoman, like ontologies. The Dalai clocks can experience kind of bittersweet existential angst about the meaning of theology and versus true existential reason in some sense. So I think that, anyways, I hope this lecture kind of opened your mind to the possibility that just as the philosophy of mind can be accredited by Nietzscheanism, so can the study of all possible worlds across our multiverse. And whether Nietzscheanism is trans-world identity and the key concepts. I mean, there's so many concepts. It's not just, Übermensch, will to power, amor fati. I mean, there's numerous concepts in his book that don't get talked about as much, and I think that all kind of stipulates itself upon still the ontological status of being able to possess the property of Meinongian or transworld identity in impossible worlds, even the most obscure concepts that Nietzsche's invented. Now, my favorite Nietzschean concept, I would say, Nietzsche's very transhumanistic like emancipation, not only of Platonic geometry and explaining the supervenience of the mind over the brain, but also the supervenience of humanity over metaphysical incorrigible laws that are thought to restrict people naturally. So I hope this lecture brought you some brief solace, and I appreciate if you could like and subscribe, or just go to my Quora account and follow me there. So anyhow, thank you so much. And